Everyone in my family knows the rule. If you hear footsteps on the porch after sunset, you draw the salt line before you look outside, not around the house, not at the doors. Just a straight line across the threshold, from one side of the frame to the other, clean, unbroken. As a child, I accepted the rule the way children accept gravity. It simply existed. As an adult standing alone in the same house years later, I understood why it had been taught so carefully. Fear settles deeper when it's been waiting for you your whole life. The woods around our town always felt close, like they leaned inward when you weren't watching. Even on calm nights, I used to feel watched in a quiet, patient way. Not hunted, assessed. My grandmother taught me the salt rule when I was 6. She poured the salt slowly, her hand steady, her eyes never leaving the doorway. "It's not to keep things out," she said. "It's to keep them honest." I remember nodding, pretending to understand, even though the words felt heavy and wrong. When I asked what she meant, she just looked at me for a long moment. "If it crosses," she said, "it's allowed to be seen. If it doesn't, you were never meant to know." At the time, I laughed because the idea felt silly. She didn't laugh back. Years later, after she died, I moved back into the house alone. The rooms felt smaller without her presence, but the silence felt larger, stretching into corners my eyes avoided. The air still carried the faint smell of dried herbs and old wood. The salt bowl still sat on the small table by the front door, exactly where she had left it. I told myself it was just habit. The first night I heard the footsteps again, I was half asleep on the couch, drifting between dreams and wakefulness. The sound pulled me fully awake before I could stop it. One step, then another. Heavy enough to be human, too measured to be casual. My stomach dropped with a sick familiarity. Not panic yet. Recognition, the kind that comes when something you hoped was imaginary proves it was only patient. I stayed still, listening. My thoughts raced, trying to explain it away. A deer, wind, old wood shifting. The steps stopped directly outside the door. No knock, no voice, just waiting. That waiting felt intentional, like something knew exactly where I was standing inside. I forced myself to move. My legs felt weak, like they were borrowed from someone else. I took the salt bowl, my hands trembling enough that grains spilled onto the floor. I poured the line carefully anyway, breathing shallowly, terrified of breaking it by rushing. The salt stretched clean and white across the doorway, unbroken. Only then did I look through the peephole. The porch was empty. Moonlight washed over bare boards. No shadow, no shape. Relief came too fast, sharp and embarrassing. I almost laughed, then something scraped against the door. Not a knock, a fingernail. Slow, curious, tracing the edge of the wood like it was learning me. My chest tightened. Every memory of my grandmother's warnings surged forward at once. A voice followed, soft and familiar. "Please," it said, "I know you're there." My grandmother's voice. My breath caught painfully. Grief surged up so suddenly it made my eyes sting. For a split second, I wanted it to be real. I wanted to open the door. "I just need to come in," the voice continued. "I forgot something." I backed away from the door, heart hammering so hard I could feel it in my throat. "You're dead," I whispered, more to myself than to it. There was a pause, long enough to make the silence feel deliberate. "I know," the voice said gently. "That's why I can't cross unless you let me." A fingernail tapped just above the salt line. Tap, tap, tap. "I'm cold," it said. "Just open the door a crack." My thoughts raced, frantic and uneven. I remembered another thing my grandmother used to say, something she told me only once. "They always ask small favors first." I stayed silent, forcing myself to breathe through the urge to respond. Minutes dragged by, my legs ached from standing still, my heart refused to slow. The voice softened, turned almost fond. "You always were stubborn," it said, "just like me." The footsteps eventually retreated, the sound fading into the woods beyond the porch. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed on the couch, eyes fixed on the door, until morning light finally pushed through the windows. When dawn came, the salt line was still intact. I told myself it had been grief, stress, my mind replaying voices it missed. Still, my hands shook as I swept the salt back into the bowl. The second night, the footsteps came earlier. Dusk hadn't fully settled when I heard them approach. This time there were two sets, one heavy, one lighter, dragging slightly. Cold fear slid through me. I poured the salt line faster now, my movements practiced by memory rather than thought. The voices came together. "Please," my grandmother said. "Mom?" another voice asked. My mother's voice, warm, familiar, gone for 10 years. My chest tightened painfully, my mind screamed at me not to listen, but my heart strained toward the sound. "We just want to talk," my mother said. "You don't have to open the door." "Just look at us," my grandmother added. "You owe us that much." The salt line glimmered faintly. I stared at the floor instead, tears pooling in my eyes. I thought about how easy it would be to look, how much I wanted to. I didn't. The voices lingered, shifting, overlapping, memories stitched together into something almost right. Almost. When they left, the porch creaked under retreating weight. I didn't clean the salt that night. In the morning, I saw the line had been disturbed, not broken, pressed into, as if something had leaned against it, testing its limits. On the third night, the footsteps came from inside the house. My heart slammed so hard it knocked the air from my lungs. I sat upright, panic roaring through my ears. The front door was locked, the salt line untouched. The sound came from the hallway, from the kitchen. I grabbed the salt bowl and moved toward it, every instinct screaming at me to run instead. The kitchen doorway loomed dark and empty. The footsteps stopped at the threshold. I poured the salt, hands shaking violently now. The moment the last grain fell, something slammed into the doorway from the other side. The impact rattled the walls, vibrating through my bones. A shape pressed against the darkness beyond the salt, warping it as if it were trying to remember how to exist. My grandmother's voice returned, strained and angry. "You were supposed to move on," it said. "This house was ours." Tears blurred my vision. Fear and grief tangled together until I couldn't tell them apart. "I live here now," I said, my voice barely steady. The shape withdrew slowly, reluctantly. The footsteps retreated deeper into the house, toward rooms I hadn't opened since the funerals. I didn't follow. At sunrise, I packed my car and left. The house still stands. No one else has moved in. Sometimes, when I drive past the old road, I see salt scattered across the porch, bright in the sunlight. Still unbroken. Because some thresholds don't keep things out. They keep them from becoming real.